Hello, I'm Bob
Hello.
Hoover. Hello, David Schnitter.
Uh,
We are here for our podcast on the real side, which you'll hear that song in the background, which was composed by our good friend Walther Davis Jr., who we'll be talking about a little later on in the podcast. And I'm honored and happy to have a wonderful musician, a delightful human being, and a friend of mine for a long time, Mr. David Schnitter, is with us today. Hello, David.
Hello.
Here we are.
We
And
finally made it, right?
we made it. We had a couple of technical mishaps,
Yeah.
but and we came close today, but we did it. I knew we'd do it. I knew we could do it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I'm glad I got a hold of John.
We'd like to thank John Roach, who
Yeah.
handles David's technical side of things, and we'd like to thank Jesse Kaiser, who you may be seeing, who is here with us. Jesse does all of our technical things and a lot of the planning of the show. She's really the half of our production team.
Yeah.
And so, David and I have known each other a long time. And, a lot of the time we don't really, when musicians hang out, we don't often talk about, well, what was your childhood like or these type of things. So this is a chance where I get to ask David things like, you came from, did you grow up in Newark?
Yes.
Right in downtown Newark? Where were you? You were kind
I
of
wasn't downtown. It was actually I don't know what section you would call it, but it was the projects in um, Rose Street, Belmont Avenue, something around there. And
so
I,
it was
I
it was
lived
not
there. I lived there until I was about 10 years old, and my mom died, when I was 9, and
I'm sorry to hear that.
I just we kept on going to we moved out of the Newark and to Irvington, and that was a little better situation.
When you say we, now there was you, your father, and did you have siblings as well, or?
No, but I had a stepmother, so she took over because, as I said, my mother wasn't, she died when I was about 9, and I was, so that had a big impact on me.
I'm sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's what did your dad do for a living? Was his
He worked on he worked on Lionel trains. He was working in the factory, Irvington, New Jersey, Lionel.
Lionel? Sure, everybody had those.
And
those
I never
trains
got that.
that
They were good trains, weren't they?
they were fantastic trains. I
Yeah.
knew somebody who had them all through his house. He'd go there and he'd had them going up and down the stairs, and like he had train tracks all over the place. One of my high school
Yeah.
band teachers, he
Yeah.
came home like they say Oliver Nelson was a
Yeah.
big train,
He was
like electric train
a
fanatic. He
train.
had them all
Oh, yeah.
everywhere too.
Wow.
But
That's fantastic.
so that was just you and your dad and your stepmom.
Yeah.
And
It's me and my when after my mother died, it was just me and my dad until he got married again, which wasn't too far after that, maybe about a year or something. And we moved to Irvington from that neighborhood in Newark was getting bad. You
So,
know.
so you moved to a little better neighborhood in Irvington. And
Yeah,
was your family, was your dad, well, let's say, did you come from any kind of emphasis on religion in your family, like your grandparents or anybody was there? I know you're born Jewish, as I am, but
yeah.
was that any kind of influence in your early life, or how did that relate to you? Or
Well, sure, it was an influence on me in my early childhood, and still is. But my stepmother, she was pretty, strict with the kosher thing, you know.
your mother had not been.
Well, I didn't really get no. My mother was too, but since she got sick, the last couple of years of my life, she was she was and, it's hard to explain how, but she'd be koshering the meat, putting the thing in the bucket. Yeah, I remember that.
Wow.
So she was a pretty
With the salt, right? You put the salt on it, and
oh yeah.
it's like that whole. I've never really seen it, but I've heard
And
about it.
leaving in a pail, or something, or to get sodomized.
Huh. It's sodomized, saltamize it,
Salt them.
saltamize it. Yeah, you gotta assault it. Yeah, um, and what about music? Where did that come in? Was it somebody in your family musical, or I know you started on clarinet, right?
Yeah.
But to me, was your dad musical? Were there songs around? Was somebody uh, just
Not
curious?
real. Not real. My father, he liked music, but he was and a repairman for the train factory, and he fixed televisions as a sideline, and he was he wasn't too religious. Yeah, he'd go out and have some food on Yom Kippur, you know what I mean? Because he wasn't really into doing that whole fast thing, That's hard. That's a hard thing to do,
Oh, I
Actually,
hated it. I never really
you never got
agreed too
into
much
that.
of that. I never got into that, but
Yeah,
I, I remember what was funny was Yom Kippur used to fall around the same time as the World Series, and you'd hear the rabbi talking, and you'd see the prayers, and you'd hear the rabbi and all that going on, and you'd
yeah.
hear somebody next to you going, "Did you see what Mantle did in the seventh inning? Did you also have baseball talk going on? But you got to be in synagogue all day." And I was just saying, "Yeah, man, I couldn't believe that catch he made." Or with
Yeah,
the bases loaded, and then all
yeah,
that. So I kind of remember that. But now, where music came in, Jewish homes, like Italian homes, you played clarinet or you played accordion, or you
yeah,
played, and with Jewish homes, there was a piano almost in every house at that time,
yeah,
and clarinet and violin, I think, were the three instruments associated with
yeah,
our culture.
yeah,
How did you get involved? Was it a school band thing,
yeah, yeah. It was while I was still in Newark. Uh, I got involved. I had my music teacher was a guy, and I didn't know that until later. He taught Woody Shaw, you know,
oh,
and he was a very fine trumpet player. His name was Louis Cetera, He's gone now. And the funny thing that happened when I got out of school, or uh, I student taught, and he was my teacher overlooking what I had to do, to get out of that. That was my last year of college.
So,
But
so you
anyway,
went to college.
what college?
You went to college. You
Yeah, I did go to college. I went to Jersey City State, right there.
as
So
like a music education major, or
yeah, 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 that's right.
so you thought you were going to be like a band teacher? You were kind of aspiring.
No, I wasn't aspiring to do
No, I mean, I was.
that. I
I,
was aspiring to play, and I just that just didn't happen while I was in school. But I was playing, and I was quite an accomplished clarinetist, actually.
really, when so you were playing clarinet, and when did the saxophone and the idea that you could be a musician hit you? When did that?
Uh, um, it hit me when I was about 15, 16, but yeah, I knew that's what I wanted to do. And I'm glad I did it.
I am too. A
Yeah,
lot of us are.
yeah.
Um, were you?
The only thing that makes me happy. Well, one of the few things.
Well, I think that's why we're doing this.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Now, you were listening. When was the first time? It was okay. You started playing saxophone, and you started to after clarinet. Was
Yeah.
there a particular sound? Did you hear a saxophone player that attracted you to the saxophone, or what were you listening to? What were you, when was your first jazz experience in listening and that type of thing that you?
Um, it's a good question. Uh, well, I always was started. I was starting to listen to the more complex things in jazz and different people. You know what I mean? I would say that was maybe when I got into or got out of got into the whole got a little more out of the clarinet and got into the saxophone, and of course hearing other saxophone players that kind of changed my direction.
I mean, anybody in particular? For me, it was
Yeah,
Lester Young, and then I heard Stan Getz,
yeah,
and then some other people. Sonny Rollins, that came later. But my first people that made me really want to play the saxophone was Prez, because he had that beautiful relaxed sound,
yeah,
and and then Stan Getz because he was actually also Jewish and white and could hang with those people, and
yeah.
also had a very engaging sound on the instrument. I was very attracted to that.
Absolutely, absolutely.
And who were the first cats like that really grabbed you and said, "I really want to," made you want to really play the saxophone?
Uh, well, I would say Charlie Parker, although I didn't wasn't playing alto. Tenor was my first second instrument beside the clarinet. But yeah, he Sonny Rollins and Charlie Parker came later. When I heard that, it just blew me away. With his melodies, melodic concept, and also his control. He was one of the great. Yeah, he's a genius.
Yeah, well, I mean, that was also with me when I finally heard Bird.
Yeah.
that opened up a whole other door
Oh yeah.
right there. My
Yeah.
father, when I bought my first Charlie Parker record, I spent the whole day listening to it. I got it about 2 o'clock in the afternoon over at Jefferson Department Store in Miami, and listened to it until about 9, 10 at night. And by that point, I could sing most of the record. I
Uh-huh.
was like I was like 12 years old, and I thought I'd wait for my dad and show him how had accomplished this feat. I could actually sing along with his Bird record, and I'd never heard Bird until that day. And my dad was working at the Diplomat Hotel in Miami, behind the different acts that came in. My dad was a trumpet player.
Yeah, I met your dad.
You did.
I met your dad at the first wedding.
Wow, that's right. You did. You
That's
met
right.
my dad. And anyway, so dad comes home, and I'm waiting for him. I'm kind of lurking in the corner, and it's about like 1 in the morning. My dad was not a drinker, and this night he drank a little, I think, and he opens up the bills. He goes to the kitchen, and he opens up some envelopes, and he opens up a bill, and the next thing I know, he throws his horn and the soft case onto the couch, and starts cursing the horn out, and 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 then he's sitting there going, "Fucking plumbers, fucking." I said, and I say, "Dad, what is it about the fucking plumbers?" He said, for years I played this thing, 20, 25 years, put all my heart in it, all my soul, put all these hours into it, and this plumber just got for 2 hours what I'm making in a week. He's like, "You ever play music, I'll fucking strangle you." So I just went back I didn't sing him the Charlie Parker record.
Yeah,
But
right. Well,
so
you were lucky. I got what I heard in the house with the first records were more bent on the Jewish. What do they call that? What do they call that?
like Jan Pierce and that kind of.
Klezmer, yeah, klezmer music, or Dave Towers. He was a clarinet player. I heard some of that.
So you see, I never even heard klezmer music growing up. I
Oh
didn't
yeah,
hear. I didn't
I
even
heard
hear.
her song. I didn't know what it was. It was called klezmer, but yeah, that's what I heard. And
Did you
then
play some of that stuff on clarinet?
what?
Did you play some of that stuff on clarinet?
Not really.
No.
Not really. Not then. I played, trying to play a little Dixieland, if that was it. But no, I didn't. I didn't. That's hard to do that stuff.
Yes, it sounds hard.
Yeah. But it was swinging. Dave Taras. Anyway, it's just some music.
So you decided you want to be a musician.
Yeah.
You
Well, I wanted to. Yeah. Then I started getting some little kind of gigs here and there, and it was a pleasure. It was really pleasure.
did you do like like club dates? You play for weddings and
Oh yeah,
dances and that kind of stuff.
oh yeah, yeah,
Yeah, me too. We were the last generation that actually you would play the American repertoire. The Cole Porter tunes and Richard Rodgers and all those
the
things.
American songbook. Yeah,
American
yeah,
songbook, and the Broadway shows were
oh yeah,
still kind of popular.
yeah,
So,
yeah,
we I think we're the last generation that actually got to play those tunes for actual dancing.
yeah.
And
Absolutely.
I think it affected us in a good way. I think it gave us a feeling of I think for the rhythm, but also for the communal aspect of music, maybe.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah, no, that's very true. That's a good point. But it was a great period. Excuse me. Yeah, it was it was a great period to learn this stuff and be soaked up in those standard tunes by Irving Berlin and Jerome Kern and uh, Oscar Hammerstein.
Yeah,
These are really great people. Cole Porter. So anyway, the Americans, so that's where jazz came out of. You
well,
know,
it is, and and I think the thing is that I was thinking about that too. That the melody, harmony, and rhythm.
yeah,
Melody with those things was such a strong part of it, and then of course the way the melodies and the harmonies were wed together, and
yeah,
then playing them as jazz put the rhythm, a little took away the square rhythm and put some other kind of rhythmic thing to it.
yeah,
But I think one of the ways that the world has changed, which I wanted to talk about with you a little bit, because you've been teaching at the New School for
yeah.
quite some time as well. You do a class there,
I
and
was,
I know you deal with a
yeah,
lot of young people.
I taught there 27 years.
Right. I knew it's been a while.
Yes,
And you
yeah,
just retired recently, right? Is that?
yes, yeah,
But, we grew up with this sense of melody in the culture. If you walked into a jukebox, even a corner bar, you heard Tony Bennett sing "I Left My Heart in San Francisco," or you heard a Barbara Streisand song, or there Sinatra was on the jukebox. These tunes were part of our culture.
yeah,
And now, of course, the thing like a jukebox doesn't exist. But when you even hear music in a restaurant or the background music, I rarely hear anything that I know. I rarely hear any real melodies that are
right.
recognizable, and I think that so how do you feel about that? Like with
I'm not crazy about it. I'm not too crazy about that aspect of what's going on. Uh,
and I mean when you're trying to get the young cats interested, uh, how do you like go about that? I mean, or how would you?
well, that's a good question. Because for the kind of music that is really popular today is something I'm not crazy. I'm not in favor of right now. But I respect it, and I respect the creativity. But first of all, the music is like what's going on today is instead of singing, it's talking really, or it's like poetry, which is fine too. But it's I think we're lacking in some of a lot of the elements that make music what it is and what it could be.
Well, I think I see it like that too. Like I think like humor and romance. Don Schlitten used to talk about that a little bit. That there aren't that many players left.
Yeah,
You and I, as being two of the last cats that played with a sense of humor and romance. And
yeah,
when I see even my own children, I have a 16-year-old and a 9-year-old as well as my older daughter. But the
yeah,
young would say, Daddy, all these songs that you came up with, the words are always about love and man woman stuff and this and that. And maybe it's not as important. Maybe your generation overemphasized. And then I read a thing recently that people are making love less than ever. And I thought that like, I thought that the way we were brought up, when you played even these dances at a wedding, the feeling maybe was that after people would hear you play, they would feel closer to each other because they danced, and then they'd want to go home and make babies or do whatever they do, and have affection.
Yeah.
And the lyrics to the songs too, right, were like often conducive to like happy love, sad love, disappointed love,
Yeah.
exalted love,
Yeah. It's
and
all about yeah, you're absolutely right. I think it's all those tunes were romantic and poetic, and the words were really they were really something. They meant something, They were, they just didn't slap some insignificant things on the poetry. No, it was very poetic. Well, that's why that whole era, with all those great writers, man, came out. It's a major innovation. And I think everybody was on another level.
yeah, I get a feeling now sometimes that people are afraid of feeling,
Yeah.
and that's why jazz doesn't have. Though jazz was never the popular music, we know that it
Yeah.
was, but nevertheless, I think that there's a thing about the music that we're playing. We're trying to get to real feeling, and even the material has to do with real feeling. And I think the world is very resistant to real feeling. And even now that there's been all these distances, first there was AIDS, then there was COVID, and just even the
Yeah.
physical blockage of people getting closer together
Yeah.
is I don't know. That's something I'm having trouble wrapping my
head.
head around.
Yeah. No, absolutely. But it's I mean, I hope it can change. I don't know what it's going to change to, but there's many ways to go, and creativity exists today, with the younger generation. I mean, they're having their own they're dealing with this rap music, hip hop. They got another name for this and that, but I mean, it's it's very different. It's very different than what we came up with, And those things from 50 years ago or 75 years ago, with all the great music and lyrics that came out of well, actually before our parents' generation, 30s and 40s, and then the 50s and the 60s, and it's a lot to wrap your head around,
Yeah, well, I thought of it in a way when you realize that these tunes are almost 100 years old.
Yeah.
It would be like, let's say, if you were coming up in the bebop era in the late 1940s, early 1950s, and your tunes were Civil War tunes.
Yeah.
It's almost like, I mean, you're playing When Johnny Comes Marching Home, and they're playing Begin to Begin, So, I mean, it's I said, well, that's how, are we really that out of it? Now, some cats, like, I haven't heard it, but Donald Harrison and
Yeah.
Michael Wolf and people like that are into combining the aspects of hip hop. They're finding things and trying to relate to the younger generation, as well as through using, jazz and structures. And
Yeah.
I'm not hip to it because I read about it, but I haven't really listened to it. I'm curious to hear what they're doing with it,
Yeah.
But
I'm,
But getting back to you, I first heard you um, at Boomers. You had Tuesday nights at Boomers. That's the first time I heard your name,
yeah,
and I was curious because usually if somebody got a gig, they'd made records, or you'd heard of them, and this and that. So I went down to hear you at Boomers, and we didn't meet. I just listened to you because I was living in the neighborhood, and I'd drop in, and you sounded really good. Also, I was very impressed by the fact that I've been playing all these jam sessions with Brecker and Grossman and Dave Liebman and Bob Berg and all these cats who all played, were brilliant players,
yeah.
but they were all coming out of a certain, certain aspects of Coltrane. And you were the first cat I heard that wasn't coming from that. You sounded more like you'd been listening to Dexter Gordon and Sonny Stitt, and
Yeah.
and we're not playing it cliched, but playing it very fresh, and was that I remembered enjoying you playing at that time. That was probably like, I guess, 1974 or something like that. So that
Yeah. Something like that. Well, that's when I first heard you too. Remember that? I sat in St. James Infirmary.
oh, with Hot O'Brien and Chet,
Yeah, remember that club
of course,
on the
on Leroy Street and Seventh Avenue South.
on 7th Avenue South. That's right. And Chet was up there. And yeah, I remember you sounded great, man.
Yeah, well, we liked each other, but we didn't really hang out with each other because our lives went in different directions. Now, shortly after that,
Yeah.
when you sat in with us, were you already with Art Blakey, or were you about to? Let's talk a little bit about that, because that was where you really came to prominence, where people started to know you when you became part of the Jazz Messengers.
Yeah.
And how did that come about? And let's talk a little bit about that period.
Okay. Yeah, that was around 74, something like that. And I was living in Newark, New Jersey. I mean, yeah, but a different section of town in Newark called the Weequahic section by the park. But anyway, yeah, I started going into sit-in with a lot of people. It was trying to anyway, uh, and it was quite a learning experience, you know. Uh,
Yeah, I was doing a lot of the same stuff.
yeah, so that's where I heard you played. You were playing with Chet, and Chet, and no, that was great. Um,
But Blakey,
Yeah. So Blakey, I started Blakey in about 75, and that that was uh, um, that was the beginning of it, the beginning of my career. Actually, let me go back to Boomers. Now, Boomers, I started playing and sitting in with whoever I could play with. Joe Newman was a big one, and there was it was a lot of a lot of a lot of you know things were moving fast at that point, But anyway, it was great. That's where I met Walther Davis Jr. I met a lot of different trumpet players. I can't really think about that right.
Tex Allen,
Tex Allen was one of them. Yeah,
one of them. Yeah, and
Tex Allen and who else? And Jimmy Lovelace
Jimmy Lovelace was always around, and he was
always around and playing great.
well. All these cats, like a lot of them, lived in the neighborhood or in the East Village. Everybody was sort of around. Walther Davis was on Hudson Street, and
Yeah,
so there were, yeah. And then Mel and Bob were the two owners of Boomers, right?
yeah.
Bob Cooper and Mel.
Mel.
And
What was Mel's last name?
I can't remember, but
I can't neither. Mel, yeah. But that was a great place, man. It gave me an opportunity and gave you an opportunity too to play. I remember Steve Grossman coming down one night, yeah, it was that's a shame the way what happened to Steve,
yeah. Well, Steve was. I was talking about him with Gene Perla, and he was one of those cats that just couldn't take yes for an answer. You know, he had so much talent, and
Yeah,
there was something inside Steve that just wouldn't let himself uh,
his gift.
enjoy his gift. No, he somehow, I don't know. I mean, it's another.
Accept himself.
Yeah, he had trouble with that, and then the drugs really once. I mean, some of us get into it and have our little, like Teddy Edwards. I asked him, "What about you? Did you go through it?" And he looked at me with this knowing look, and he said, "I had my fling," and I had my fling.
Yeah,
And unfortunately, with Steve, it was not a fling, even though
yeah,
it was just something that supplied this. Well, it seems to some people it supplies a missing part of their personality, or they
yeah,
feel it does. They don't feel complete without it, and
yeah,
and unfortunately, it causes their behavior to be such. Maybe because they got to always be borrowing money, and there was Steve told me he hung out with Chet Baker every day for a while, for about 6 months. And he said, what was weird? I said, what? He said, we never talked about music and we didn't play one note of music the whole time. I
yeah.
said, because I remember Chet used to show up at my house and I couldn't tell him no. He'd want to borrow $100. And I just got back from Europe with him. So I knew I brought back money. I couldn't tell him I was broke or couldn't lie to him. So I'd give him $100 and then he'd pay me back 50, or maybe a month or two later. He'd say, oh, here's some of the money I owe you. So he always paid back half of what he borrowed. And, talk about one morning, it's about 8 o'clock in the morning and my doorbell rings. I was living in my basement apartment on McDougal Street.
Yeah.
And it's Chet and Steve. And I'm like, want to make the sign of the cross or something, I mean, Grossman and Chet Baker, boy, at 9 o'clock in the morning. That was too much. But yeah, it was sad because he, we were talking about him with Gene Perla. He had
Yeah,
such a wonderful time feeling.
yeah,
He really did. He had just a very special feeling for time
yeah,
and but
yeah,
also a part of him didn't. He wanted to play like other people a lot too. Like
yeah,
if he would get to himself, he really had his own way of playing, but he didn't trust that. It was easier to fall back on Train or later to fall back on Sonny, but
yeah,
he would get out of that, and then you get the moments that were really him, and that was profound. I found that he,
yeah,
but I mean, so Blakey used to hang out at Boomers. I mean, that was his place to
yeah,
hang, and there were some nefarious activities that
yeah,
he was also involved in there. And is that where he heard you first?
yeah, yeah. That's right. and it was a jam session too. So we had I remember Pete yelling. He was down there that night and played, and maybe a trumpet player too. I can't remember uh, the names too well that for that jam session, but that's what happened, and he gave me his number and told me to call him.
Was that Blakey or Pete?
No, that was Blakey.
Blakey gave you his number.
Yeah, and that's how I got it in the band. And he, yeah, so I kept on calling because the first time I called him, I didn't get in too much conversation. And then we talked some more, and he said, "Come on down. We got a rehearsal this afternoon." That's when he was playing the top of the gate.
I remember that.
Yeah, you
Who
remember?
else was in the band?
Well, that very first time was
Valerie?
who?
Was Valerie in it yet, or was it...
Oh no, he wasn't there. We had a couple of years to go with Valerie. It was people I didn't know. Actually, there was an alto player who was a student of Jackie McLean.
Was that Nelson? Or
Yeah, that's
I
right.
remember Nelson and Hilton Ruiz used to
Yeah,
hang out together, and
yeah.
I would play with them. We all played when we were in high school together. Yeah,
Oh, you did? Okay.
he
Well,
died young, didn't he? Didn't Nelson die?
yes, he did.
And
He did die. Yeah. I heard he was a drug counselor. You know,
really,
huh?
that's unusual because I thought I know he'd had a drug problem
Yeah,
even as a teenager.
yeah. Well, that's what I didn't realize that, but that's what happened. And but he became a counselor. Yeah, and I know, and that's what I heard anyway. Because he was, yeah,
He's a good alto player, man.
yeah,
He was a very nice alto player.
yeah.
And so Nelson was on the band, and uh,
Nelson was the band was in transit at that point. It's my first gig, and Nelson, I don't know, and then who's a piano? Oh, there was a pianist played with it. His name was Casal Allah. Did you ever meet him?
um,
Allah. He's a good pianist. I mean, he was he was coming out of he's a good composer. That's what I meant to say. Really, I liked his tunes, and we recorded one of his tunes too. It's called Third World Express,
uh,
and I don't think he's around too much now. But I mean, yeah, there's a lot of people, man, who you know, that just didn't come out of that fog. But yeah, yeah, that was. Oh yeah, the bass player Chin Suzuki.
oh yeah, Chin. Yeah,
Yeah,
he's back in Japan. Matsuo, I talked to Matsuo, the guitarist,
yeah,
last week actually, and they still do stuff together over there.
yeah. Good.
And, yeah, Chin was on bass, and so then you started to go on the road with Art. Is that what happened? And
Yeah, I started playing around New York with Art. Actually, he didn't. Yeah, and then I started it for the first time in my life go out in New York City. I mean, on the
'Cause
road.
I think I remember going down and hearing you several times with Art because it was in the neighborhood.
Yeah.
And, and I think sometimes Walther Davis Jr. was on piano
Well, that was Walther was came in a little later.
and Al Daly, right? Sometimes.
Albert, yeah, absolutely. Al Daly and Walter and John Hicks.
John Hicks and Dennis Irwin was playing bass sometimes.
Yeah. Well, in the beginning, uh, it was Chin Suzuki.
Right.
Chin stayed in
Chin
there.
stayed in for a couple of years.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's right. But it was a good band. It was brand new to me, and we had then Walter stayed. He switched to Walter Art and and that's when the stuff really took off because Walter was a great composer too.
Yeah, and those dudes, Uranus
Yeah,
and yeah, Walter was
very meaningful stuff.
yeah, it really meant a lot. Yeah, I was fortunate, Walter and I traveled as a duo
Yeah,
for years, and that was my postgraduate studies.
yeah.
He was
You got your doctorate, baby.
I got my doctorate from the University of Walter Davis.
Yeah.
Walther Davis Jr. He wanted to be called Junior because he loved his father.
Oh yeah. Okay.
Walter Bishop, you couldn't call him Walter Bishop Jr. He didn't like his father. You have to be careful how you announce them. If you were with Bish, it was
Yeah.
Walter Bishop. Walter Davis, he would always go Junior if you didn't say Junior.
Yeah.
And
I, yeah, identify it, right?
yeah, Walter told me that between lives, he had been an intergalactic engineer on a spacecraft. This whole science fiction thing he had in his mind. The other thing that amazed me about Humphrey, we called him Humphrey because he resembled that Dick Tracy character. That's
Is that where that came from? I didn't know that.
Yeah, it came from a Dick Tracy comic, which is a little before our time even.
Yeah.
But there was a character named Humphrey something, and he was like this big guy with a block head, kind of a block, which Walter kind of looked like that too. Yeah, and Humphrey was, he was. Art used to love to tell the story, because Walter was a martial arts guy.
Yeah.
He had been a bodyguard for Elijah Muhammad.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, he had done that, and he was also, he had gone to Japan. He had studied seriously karate. He would go like this to me. He would go, and he'd stop this far from my nose. To shock me, he'd go, and I go, and I knew he was never going to hit me.
Yeah.
And, and Buhane used to tell this story about how they were at some concert with Wayne Shorter and these Rolling Stone, these Hell's Angels came and tried to break up the concert. And, and everybody's hiding on the floor and just hoping these guys aren't going to stop them. He said
that was in Minnesota. Minnesota, right?
Yeah. Remember that story?
Yeah.
You could tell how Walter laid out 5 Hell's Angels. He grew sometimes it was 7, sometimes it was 5, but But
well, Walter was I don't know if you knew that Walter was a tailor.
Yes, he made his own clothes. He made ties.
Yeah, and I tried to get him to make me a beautiful jacket. He had because he. But anyway, that didn't work out. But he was quite a tailor. Beautiful jacket.
Yeah, he made some of his own clothes, and he would walk. He was wearing
his own style. Yeah.
He was wearing these robes before dashikis even came in.
Yeah.
Walter was wearing those kind of things, and people got to get the impression Walter was a big man. He was large.
Yeah.
And he and Ronnie, who was his girlfriend at the time, he used to call her his
Ronnie
queen.
Jennifer.
Well, there was Ronnie first.
Yeah, but Ronnie, that was her last name.
Ah, it's Ronnie Jennifer. I see.
Jennifer.
Jennifer. Okay.
Ginnever.
Ah, gotcha.
But she's
Yeah.
yeah, she yeah, she was here. She was his love, you know.
Yeah. He would introduce her as his queen. Have you met my queen?
That's good. That's
And
good.
they had this huge white dog that when
Uh-huh.
the dog stood up, he was taller than I was. And the dog's name was Ego. So
He
yeah,
go, you go, she go.
ego.
Yeah.
Because he had a big ego. So that was his big ego.
Yeah,
And
I
you
know.
know, and oh, the other thing that was funny about Walter that he could talk to you while he played.
Oh yeah,
Right? Did you ever do that? Remember how he would be talking?
yeah, yeah, yeah. And won't miss a beat.
Wouldn't miss a beat. He'd be sitting there. He says, "So you think that gig is going to come through in Zurich?" I don't know, man. I think somebody's talking. That was his expression when he thought something wasn't going to work. He says,
Yeah.
"Somebody's talking."
Yeah, I love Walter. He was he was very unique, very, very unique person. He was a
Yeah,
big he was a big help to me. Yeah.
he was. How do you? How? I mean, I know how he helped me. How would you say he helped you? If you wanted to be more like specific about it.
Well, I used to we had a gig before he was on the band with Art. Uh, we had a band that the Cellar Restaurant on about 98th Street and what else we did? Somewhere around that between Columbus and Central Park,
Uh-huh.
on the place. It was called the Cellar. So that's when I really got to know him because I had a little car at that time too. I was still living in Newark, so I had this little Volkswagen, and I'd take him home back home, after the gig, and yeah, he went and drop him off on his apartment on what you
On
say Hudson Street.
Hudson Street, right? Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, Hudson
and Leroy, right there.
and Louis. That's right, right. And so I got to know him a little bit. This is before, and I think I suggested, to get him on the band, because at that time we needed a piano player,
With
Uh,
Blakey.
yeah, yeah. So I said, talked to. I mean, I just brought his name up, and that worked out. That worked out really, really well.
Yeah, because of course he and Art had known each other forever.
Of course, of course.
And,
They were old pals.
they were old pals. When he was on the band, he was replaced by Bobby Timmons. He was
Uh,
on the band with Lee Morgan and Wayne
right,
and
right.
Jimmy Barrett. And Walter said that he left and Bobby Timmons took his place.
Okay. Yeah,
That was how that happened.
yeah.
The other, yeah, I know Walter. The feeling I got with him was, I always felt I got a little better every time I played with him.
Yeah.
Somehow he infused you with some of fairy dust. I don't know, some magic thing that he had.
Yeah.
Those cats, I think they understood that magical part of the music.
Yeah.
And it's intangible. You can't really say exactly what it was.
Yeah.
But guys like Walter and Albert Daly was another one. John Hicks too.
Yeah.
I mean, there were a few cats, of course.
Yeah.
I mean, just but let's Al Daly. Did you have some experiences
Oh
with
yeah. Oh yeah.
Albert? 'Cause,
He was on the band too. With,
yeah, I mean,
yeah.
can you talk a little
I,
bit about him? I mean,
yeah. Well, Albert was. We recorded it together. That, that album called Backgammon. And now Backgammon was
Walter Davis's too.
Walter Stone, yeah. But Albert Daly was on it. And yeah, a lot of people, they just slept on Albert. Al was Albert Daly was I understand, but he was a very good basketball player. Did you know that?
He told me he was an all-star varsity athlete in high school.
Yeah.
I have one story that kind of corroborates that, which
Yeah.
is kind of funny. One day, Albert was living in Mount Kisco, New York, for a while. He
Yeah.
had one of his brief marriages,
Yeah.
and Albert was there. We had eaten some ribs in a restaurant, and Albert was not known for his humility. He said, "I said, good ribs, huh?" Albert says, "They're good, but mine are better. Mine are unbeatable. My ribs are, And I said, "Really? How good are they? They were that good?" He said, "Yes. In fact, why don't you come over and I'll make you some of my famous ribs?" I said, "That'd be wonderful." He said, "Bring your horn. We'll play duets." So, I go up to Mount Kisco
Yeah.
and we spend the morning playing these incredible duets because we had a very special feeling with each other.
Yeah.
And the ribs are cooking. The ribs are cooking away.
Yeah.
And then the at that time we didn't have answering machines or anything, but I had a roommate, and my roommate, you'd always leave the number where you were going in case somebody called with some work, right?
Yeah.
Something. So he calls me and he says, Hot O'Brien just called, and he's got a gig tonight at Gregory's, and he wants you to come and play at, the gig starts at like 8 o'clock or something like that.
Yeah.
And can you get there? And can you take it? You should take it. So I said to Albert, I said, Al, maybe I'll pass on it. Maybe I'll give somebody, else a call because I'm having such a great time because we were burning. I mean, the music was just wonderful.
Yeah.
And those ribs I was smelling those ribs too. And I'm, I don't want to go. I love Hot O'Brien. Believe me, I love Hot, but I mean, this is such a special day, And Albert says, listen, someone calls you for work, you take the gig. And a guy like Hot, he said, he's been your friend, he's given you a lot of work, and you guys are buddies, you got to take that gig. There's no question about it. He said, I'll make ribs again. He said, we'll have other occasions. He said, but you got to do what you got to do. I said, oh, all right. Oh, And he said, wow, the next train is in 15 minutes. So you better get on that train. So I took one last whiff of the ribs, and we go out the door, and I'm there waddling with my horn, my alto, my soprano, and my music bag. And Albert was heavy at this point because he went different weights. Sometimes he'd be thinner, and sometimes he would be heavier, and he was at one of his heavier weights.
Yeah.
And we're at the top of the hill, and we see the train pull into the station because you got view of the station there. And the train is going to leave in like 2 minutes. We're just making it. And Albert says, okay, I got it. And he went down that hill like he played for the Los Angeles Rams or something. I never saw that much weight move that fast outside of a football field. And he stopped the train. I'm waddling behind him, carrying my horns, trying to get down the hill. He made it like in 2 minutes or less. He was right at the train. He had the train held up, waiting for me. I got on the train, and I asked him later. I said, "How did you do that? How did you move that fast?" He said, "Well, I was an athlete. Yeah,
Wow.
you
Yeah.
know, he,
Yeah. He was quite an athlete, they tell me. But
he was also a concert pianist too."
Baltimore.
Baltimore, that's right. He and Gary Bartz, I think, grew up together,
Yeah.
and
Yeah. There's a whole lot of but those were the days. Wish
those were
they
the days.
never, huh?
Those were the days.
I wish they never end.
Yeah, they, they still exist somehow when you live those things in your mind. They're
Yeah.
somewhere. They're somewhere there.
Yeah.
I just, it's just friends like that and people like that were just so. I mean, we got each other,
Yeah.
which is wonderful. But these guys were our elders too. You and I are peers, so
Yeah.
we're sort of. It's a different kind of inspiration, I think, than you got from those cats. From
Yeah. The elders.
the elders. Now, I'm just thinking, racially, that was a factor. I mean, one thing I noticed about guys like Albert and Walter and all of these cats.
Yeah.
I mean, the only time Walter ever said anything weird to me, one night Walter says to me, he said, "You played so beautiful tonight, man. It was really nice." He said, "I couldn't help but think of what you would have played like had you been black." And I was like, it shocked me, David. I was like, wow, I never even thought he thought of that. So I told him, I said, "Walter, I don't think that's the where it's at. What the thing is that you sat at the feet of Bud Powell, Thelonious Monk, and Charlie Parker, and you learned this music
Yeah.
directly from them. And all I had was you."
Yeah. Yeah. No,
And he laughed.
that was it's a good answer too.
Yeah, but really, I never felt any. I mean, there were people that gave me stuff. Did you? I was going to say, how did you approach that? I mean, you kind of grew up in a black neighborhood, I believe.
Yeah. Yeah, I did. And that I cherish those days growing up there. Actually, yeah, my first 10 years of life, but I I had a lot of great experience. My childhood back in early childhood was was the most fun I had. Really, there was,
Really?
yeah, yeah. There was no problem with racially instigated by then. Of course, now kids are shooting each other and and it's just a crazy environment, man. You go to school and get shot up, and
Yeah, I panic all the time. Knock wood, my kids
yeah,
still in school, and it's
you don't know what's going to happen. I just couldn't live it. But I was blessed being around good. Well, I was very young, 10, 11, 12 years old. Uh, so no, there wasn't any gun violence, not where I was concerned. But although I found out later, because I did keep in touch with one of my best friends, who was black. His name was Stevie Hanford. I never, and he was a good, a great guy, and we were very close. And that's what happened. I never I never did forget him, you know. But
Did he die? He died.
I don't know. I don't know. I ran into him in Newark in some kind of store, but you know, he used to protect me or something, you know, if somebody said anything or was some kind of a problem. So
Well,
I had a very good experience racially.
well,
Uh,
do you
yeah,
find that you know, in those days there was some resentment sometimes among some people in the jazz community. I found not very frequently, but
yeah,
now and then there was somebody who just said, "It's not your music. Why don't you go play Beethoven?" And
yeah. Well,
uh,
that's you know, people like Art uh, Art and Walther and all the people that came after. You know, they just didn't think that way. I mean, the best of the uh, black musicians. Some of them got a little bitter, but were bitter. But I didn't find
yeah, but they knew it wasn't us. You know what I mean? That we weren't the reason for their
that's right. That's
bitterness. You know, I mean, like Albert had a quartet for a while. He had Dennis Irwin, he had Adam Nussbaum, and he had me.
yeah,
And I
yeah.
don't think it even occurred to him that he had three white guys in the band.
Right, right,
You know,
right.
I don't think it even he even thought of that. But now these days, I find, I mean, I'm not on the scene that much. You know,
Yeah,
you're a little bit more on it. But when I look at who's playing, I look at who's at Smalls and who's here and who's there. I think it seems to be a little more of a racially polarized situation,
yeah.
maybe in the last years. Does it seem like that to you? That it, do
Well,
you
I'm
think
not.
there,
I'm not. You know, this year I'm not. Haven't been really out there myself. You know, too much. But uh, I don't know. You know, you think it's more polarized now?
I think it may be, but I don't.
Yeah,
You know, I don't really know. I just know that I see. Um, it seems like there's a bunch of bands that are black, and it seems to be less integrated
yeah,
than
it was.
than it was. But I don't know about that. I'd like to hear what people say about that.
Yeah, that's a good point. I don't know either, and I don't really go out to clubs too much. But I could get a. I could ask somebody that question. You know,
Yeah,
I'm sure a lot of. I'm sure there's a lot of people. You know. That are very open and don't have carry any malice or anything around, especially there. I mean, but there was a time in the '60s, you know, with with some of the major players. They were trying to get some more, you know, cooperation and you know, make bonding. Making things better. And
well, like Archie Shepp and Roland Kirk and
yeah,
those
that's right.
people were all trying to. There was a, you know,
Yeah,
but people used to say about Mingus, for instance. Somebody say, "Well, Mingus is a racist, isn't he?" And I say, "No, he's a militant. There's a difference. He believes. I mean, you know, I mean, he got white friends. He's got a white wife. He's got, you know, I mean, he obviously, it's not racism. It's
right.
militancy. He wants the thing to change, and he wants the thing to change quickly. And
Yeah,
that doesn't make him racist, but it makes him militant. You know, like people told me Archie Shepp. I went up to the Olatunji Center to hear Archie Shepp when I was in high school, And everybody said, "Oh boy, you know, he doesn't even want to talk to white people. Watch out for Archie." So I liked the concert, and after the concert, I walked up to him and I asked him about the overtones, like how was he getting these double stops and these overtones, and was there anything he particularly practiced? And he spent 15 minutes with me after the concert talking to me about top tones for saxophone and Sigurd Rascher.
Yeah,
And, you know, there was absolutely, and I've known Archie through the years, you know, this, you know, he's way above all that.
yeah,
And,
yeah. Sure. That's right.
you know, so,
Yeah, but they came up in the, the late '60s, and that's what was happening. And
well, I think the King assassination affected things a lot too.
yeah,
That there was a real reason to be angry.
that's a good point.
And,
That's a good point.
you know,
But
Freddie Hubbard, I went to hear you with Art, and it was it was part of the jazz festival with our friend Nadia. We went out to hear you, and you played so great that night. And Freddie was the guest,
yeah,
and I wondered if that was what led you. Had you played with Freddie before then, or because I know you played with Freddie for a while. What's your history with Freddie? I wanted to know something about that. Freddie Hubbard, we're talking about.
yeah, sure, sure.
I know you know. Just,
Yeah, but we're well, Freddie. Freddie was actually very, very, very good to me. Very good, and we got along good. He's was a great, great. I'm sorry he's gone. I really am, and it didn't have to be like that, but it did have to. He's one of the greats, the real giants of that instrument.
but he's another one that I didn't know him that well, but I had a couple of times hanging out with him pretty seriously,
Yeah,
and he had a hard time liking himself. I
yeah.
think that
I,
like Grossman and like some of those.
why do you say that?
Well, he seemed tormented, and we talk about it. He found it difficult to be happy, and there was a drug dependency there too.
Yeah, yeah.
But
Instead of the down, it was the up.
he was the up, yeah, and his heart had been broken. He would talk about that girl in Japan that he loved, and he who
Oh
broke his
yeah,
heart.
I know, and sounds like he opened up to you.
Well, we had an evening where there were some things conducive to that, and and for some reason he did, and
Yeah,
that was the only night I really got to know him, because other than that I knew him to say hello and to,
yeah,
but I never really knew him. And then that was one night in Israel. We just ran into each other and hung out till the sun came up, and really had this,
wow. Well,
But
how did you like Israel?
well, I had a very strange time there. I felt like Art Farmer mentioned it. He said there's a lot of hate in the air.
Yeah,
This
wow.
was there was a feeling of like of uneasiness that way,
Yeah,
and they really were into these rules. They had a lot of rules you had to obey,
yeah,
and I mean I enjoyed some of there was a group of kids that they gave me I did a master class with them,
yeah,
and and I got to play with Walter Bishop and Ray Brown in a tribute to Bird, and that was like nice to do
yeah,
there.
yeah,
But it wasn't a place that I wanted to really put on my list of a place to go back to frequently. I didn't feel that much of an association being Jewish. I
yeah,
didn't feel like I'm home. I'm in the homeland because I was not raised religiously.
yeah.
What did you think of it? You've been there.
No, I haven't.
Oh, you never went there.
I never went there. I'd like to go there, but it just hasn't happened yet.
Well, I was I'm kind of a chicken too. Like when the musician took a bus tour from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem, I said, no, I'll stay in the hotel. I just had this feeling of, you
You
know,
don't want to get blown up.
didn't want to get blown up. There was a feeling of that. But my
Yeah,
kids were just there for 2 weeks with their mother and their grandmother, and they had a wonderful time. They floated in the
yeah,
Red Sea, and they really did enjoy it. So
yeah,
I don't know. It just wasn't on a place. It wasn't.
yeah,
I'll stick with Italy. Now you'd spent a lot of time in Europe.
yeah.
What were some of the things that you noticed that were you were in Spain a lot? Where were you? I mean, you were everywhere, but where did you like the best? And can you tell us a little bit about the difference between Europe and America with audiences and music and whatever comes to your mind?
Yeah. Uh, I'll try to do that. Well, in in uh, in the in Spain, I mean, I caught Spain at a very good time, and it was like what that was. I'm trying to think what years I was there. 1970s. No, it was the 80s. But I caught Spain. Spain was undergoing after it was after Franco, and things were just opening up. The people were great, the Spanish people, and I uh, I thought it was a great place to, really. It was like America or New York in more like in the 50s or 60s, 60s. And, I just, I got really, you know, I did a few seminars over there. Yeah, that's how it started. And there were some really talented young players over there.
Perico,
Yeah,
Perico
Perico
was a
Zambia.
monster. Yeah, Zambia, he could play.
Yeah, and well, he's one of my students.
Really?
Yeah,
Well, you did a great job with him.
I did. And there was more like him, uh,
Wow.
because there's Perico Aladio. I forgot his last name. He was the tenor player, and
I kind of remember him too.
Ramon Cardo.
Ramon Cardo, I remember well.
Yeah. Did you ever go over there and do a seminar?
I did a couple of workshops that Fabio set up for me in
Oh,
different
yeah,
in
Fabio. Yeah,
different places. You
yeah,
know,
yeah,
mostly I played clubs. Cafe Central
yeah,
and Amores in Madrid, and you know,
yeah,
and even went all the way from Valencia to down to was it Alhambra, that area. The
near
Moors.
near Morocco, right?
Yeah, that whole thing. I
Yeah,
mean, I thought that they really well they understood my hours, didn't they? They understood jazz hours. I
yeah,
mean, you'd
they
start
sure.
playing. The concert started at 11 at night, right?
Oh, you got that right. Yeah, they sure did. No, but they were. It was a great place, and they would pay you respective good wages.
Yeah, I thought it was nice, and it was a wonderful concept. That whole idea of working a couple of hours. The shops, what they would open at about 9, 10 in the morning, and then by noon they'd take a siesta, they'd take a nap, and everybody come back about 5 in the evening
Yeah,
until about 9, 8:39, and that was
yeah.
their work day. And then after
You're
that,
right.
I
It
mean, there was
was
a
it
feeling
was
of having
party.
fun.
It was partying.
Yeah, I mean, it was and I guess they'd had all those years under Franco, having everything be so uptight
Oh
that
yeah,
They just went, completely in the other direction.
Yes, they did. That's that's because they knew about Franco and his third world repression.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
and then
But
I
what?
like Italy too a lot.
Oh yeah. Well, that's very similar. That's very similar. I was wondering uh, how if Italy was similar, we see as the same kind of feeling in you know in what was I
In Spain.
in Spain? Yeah, in Spain, Italy, and those things. Now, yeah, my question was, what's Israel feel like to you? Is there some of that same commonality with the
I didn't feel that.
no?
No, I didn't. I really didn't feel that. I felt, and I just felt this. It seemed, because I mean, there's soldiers around there, and there's like,
Oh
you
yeah,
get a feeling that there's, you didn't get that feeling in those other countries. There was a feeling of, I didn't get that. No, I didn't get a feeling of uh,
freedom.
of freedom and partying. And
Yeah,
there's something about a Latin thing. I mean, we got,
yeah,
I think there's something else that we've got going as Jewish people, but it
yeah,
ain't partying. That was, I mean, I'm sure there's some Israelis that will tell me I'm totally wrong and I didn't go to the right places, I didn't see the right things, and they're
yeah.
probably right about it. But it wasn't a place that I really
Wanted to be at.
to be at so much. And well, the last thing I want to talk to you about is, you have managed to, not managed to, but I would say you've had a very long and happy, I would say, relationship with your wife Marty.
Yeah,
I've known her for a long time as well with you.
yeah,
And you know, can you give us some insight into like what kind of has made that work together, and how you've it's not easy to uh, to live our life and keep a relationship. Can you give me some insights into what kind of makes that work for you, and how you met, and a little bit of the history of that, if you don't mind?
okay. Um, I've met I met Marty in at the Keystone Corner, in
San Francisco.
yeah, San Francisco, and I we talked briefly in there, and 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 I saw her again the year after.
Hmm.
I saw her again in a year, second time, and not that I made a date for it, but she remembered me, and we uh, we got together and Shane Batik.
Yeah.
Batik, baby. No, but I got together. I've been and she's yeah, I think she's a wonderful singer, and
It really is.
you know she understands for uh for me she understands the music, she understands me, she's uh she's my psychoanalyst.
It's
And
been
I
30
need
years, right? At
what?
least. It's been around 30 years.
Oh, it's been more than that. It's been almost about we got together in 79. 79.
Wow.
So you
Yeah.
figures that
44 years.
yeah, 44, another 6 years, it'll be 50. Uh, and that's, you know, I mean, she puts up with me. You know,
Sure.
I learned a lot from her. And I'm very fortunate. I feel I'm very fortunate. And
Yeah, she's a wonderful human being. I've
yeah,
loved her dearly for a long time too.
yeah, yeah,
And you didn't chase. Just one other thing about the music business.
yeah,
You and I are sort of a little bit like alike that way. That I just never could really go after that gold ring or whatever you're supposed to get. I mean, somehow I kept working because I had my daughter, who's now older, but
yeah,
um, just to, and fortunately, every time I was on the brink of getting a job at Burger King, something came up which let me continue in music. Either a
yeah,
gig or a master class or a concert, a little small tour or a festival,
yeah,
something that I was on the edge of saying, what else can I do? A few times, and I'm sure, but you just, I mean, had you wanted to pursue you know, like I always tell people, it's not a career, it's a calling.
yeah.
With some of us,
That's a good way to put it. That's a very good way to put it.
I've always known you as being very dedicated to music. I mean, even our interest in classical music that you and I remember, listening to Schoenberg together and studying scores and,
Yeah.
and being dedicated to the music. But the business,
The business sucks.
that's one way to put it. Yeah. I mean, you've been a few you've been through a few record deals and companies and
Yeah,
people breaking promises and uh,
yeah.
what especially sucks about it.
Well, yeah, yeah. You hit it on the head. You know, the business. The business. Business is business, and music is music. And the people running the music are unfortunately they're businessmen. You know, and that's where most of that contentious division lies. You know, between that and a lot of the people, most of the people in power, are not musicians, right? I mean,
Right.
there might be a
Yeah.
couple of people, few and far between, but that's what uh, that's what this is, you know. But other than that, man, it's really it's really a hard a hard road to follow, you know, very tricky. And for a person who really, just has his heart on playing, and for the pure joy of music, uh, they should follow that, you know. But that doesn't mean uh, it's gonna grow into something that's you can live on, or it depends on what you need out of life. But it's a very difficult choice, actually,
Yeah, it is.
especially for young people today. I think there's so many ways to go. You know what I mean? But
Yes.
it's I don't think for a talented young man or a young woman, you follow your heart, follow your heart, and keep your eye on what you know that that it will grow. It will grow. It will come out of you, and hopefully you'll make something.
Well, that's true. Speaking of, just one other thing. You did a thing, nursery rhymes for the 21st century.
Yeah.
What is that, and how did that come about? And then we've got to go because I'm
Okay, I know.
curious about that. What is that?
Nursery rhymes for the 21st century. I did quick sketches of some nursery rhymes, coming out. It's a pretty free concept. Oh, that was from the guy. Who's the guy who had the record things? He lived upstate. You know? You know him? Chris.
Black?
What?
Bob Sunan Black?
Suit and Black?
Or Mark Feldman? Oh, you mean Uptown Records or?
No. He really lived in near Schenectady. He had a little family up there, and his name was Bob something. I can't think of it.
Not Bob Sunan Black.
Suit and Black? No, I don't think it was Bob. It was no, it wasn't Suit and Black. Where is he about?
I can't remember, but I just remember he had.
No, he had this small little things, and most of it was free things. You got any other things, choices you can throw out there?
No.
No?
But anyway, you did this nursery rhyme record.
Yeah, I did a nursery rhyme record with the trumpet player. What the hell was his name? I'm forgetting it because I haven't seen him in a long time. And the bass player was I can't think of his name now. See, I'm losing it.
Well, Hal Galper and I were talking about that too. Names, sometimes as you get older, those names just escape you.
Yeah.
You just met too many people.
But
anyway, that about wraps it up for today, I think.
Yeah.
Any final thoughts, Dave?
No, we hit upon I think some very good points and very good subjects. And
well, it was great to have you. And
thank you.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you.
It was a pleasure being here. And tell you the truth, I'll think of those names for you if you want to join that. The guy.
Don't worry about it.
He had a record company. But you, how you doing with your record thing?
Well, it's a long, complicated
story.
Yeah, and hopefully they're talking about making a little documentary film about me.
Yeah.
That will get done before the record does.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can't. It's too complicated to go into, but thank you for asking.
Yeah.
And, anyway, we're really happy to have had David Schnitter with us today. We're happy that you came to join us. Once again, we thank you for On the Real Side. We thank Jesse Kaiser for helping to put all this together.
Yeah.
And we ask you if you've enjoyed what you've been watching, to do the appropriate social media move, and I believe that's to say that you like it. So if you like it, I guess give us a like. That's how they keep score of these things.
That's right.
It has something to do with it. Once again, thanks a million, Dave Schnitter.
Thank
And
you. Thank you, Bob. It's great. Thanks you for having me.
my pleasure, and God bless. And we'll see you next time
Yeah,
with another version of On the Real Side,
on the real side.
as you hear Walther Davis's tune.
Was that his tune?
Walther Davis Jr. wrote this tune called On the Real Side, which is beautiful. You'll hear it. It's
I like to hear it. Yeah.